quickly cover a couple of very brief things. How many of you were aware of the situation with Europe at this time? Well, yeah, you are, because you sent the information, but anyone else? That there's a falling down in terms of the development of the so-called Caucasians losing their power.
Yeah.
But any of you aware of that? Any of you? So let me have your ear for a quick moment. Go ahead. I'm still waiting for your answer. Any question?
I have something else to say. I was reading, and the people, they mentioned something about, well, you know, the Asians want to be white. And what happened is that the man said, listen, he said, just because they're white, they're not Europeans, they're not us. The features are different. He said, you got to, and also he said, remember, you got to, that the seed, they know the seed come from the father, not the mother. He said, so when these people come up, they look like, he said, they're still going to be us, you know, the blacks. So they know about the seed.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Just a quick point on that. It was just an article that was taken from, was that from a book or from
no,
some
Quora. I've subscribed to that.
All right, so periodical. All right, so, but yes, Esau is very concerned that the population is of them is becoming less and less. Bear in mind that Esau, this is their own findings, and they're realizing that their people are not reproducing at the rate that they should. That's the other reason why what they're looking to do is to, and remember that they are now pushing this. They're looking to mate with the black genome. Have you not seen their ads, how they now promoted mixing?
That's right.
But it's conditional. Now, in the teaching that we're going to do shortly, some of what was just mentioned is going to be proven. But the Europeans do not necessarily like mixing. They don't like mixing. And most of them are aware that the dominant mixing is father to a female, a male to a female of that nation. When you hear these so-called Ashkenazi Jews say that they are a Jew because of their mother, there is no such thing. Now, why do they make that statement? Just so that make sure that some of our brothers and sisters are not ignorant of that. Why do they make that statement? What are they using as their cause?
Grace and peace.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, they're using it as a cause to say that they're a Jew.
No, I need basically just one word. It's a medical word, not medical, but it's a physiological term that hailed primarily from the woman. It's a particular gland. Let's just put it like that. So, to make life easier. Anyone?
Could you repeat what you said? I didn't hear.
There are two things that are dominant. One that is dominant with the man, and one that's dominant with the woman. with the woman, there was a gland that they've been pushing to say that that's what can make a man claim his bloodline of his mother. It's wrong, and it's called the what is it called?
You're referring to mitochondria?
Yeah. Say a bit louder so that everybody can hear.
Mitochondria?
Yeah. Now, that does not make or bring any dominance to any family line. Sister Dolores, I saw your hand. Mm-hmm.
When he made the statement, we need more Europeans.
Say that one more time.
At the time that Trump was president, he made a statement that we needed more Europeans.
We needed more Europeans.
When he was blocking the border.
Yeah.
So we need to let more Europeans come over.
Sure.
So that looks into
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can you do that usually on the outside, sir? Can you do it on the outside?
Okay.
Right. Yeah, I know. I understand. All right, so here we are. The white man is afraid that his bloodline is going to diminish. But the reason why it is inevitable is because prophecy has been spoken on him. He is not going to exist into the future. He is going to find himself in a situation where he will become extinct. So that's another matter. We won't go into that, but we're live now. I just really want to greet all our brothers, near and far, those of you in all of the different areas across the country and even across the world. We want to greet our brothers in Europe, those in Africa, by saying Brokta Yahweh, by Shema Mashiach, Yahweh Shai Selah. We give all praises on this day, which is the Sabbath. We praise his name because he is a good God to us. And again, we're still finding that the devil is out there trying to pollute the gospel and to frame the lie that every man is free to take on salvation. We met a gentleman last night who was very pushy to the point of the fact that the gospel is for everyone. And they always want to tell us that God came to them in a dream. And they always want to tell us that God spoke to them. You know, hogwash, really. And yet the sad thing is, the same individual, if you could see how quickly this man went from being peaceable to just getting ready to raise his voice. And this is Esau, because he really believes that he has the right to do so. And then he had to be instructed, control your passion, calm down. And the police were watching us, by the way. So there's a squad car right there. And sometimes you have to be aware of what the enemy is doing before, because sometimes people come, but they have a plan, they have an intention. You see, this type of man that normally would not have come, but because the squad car was right there, and then he was getting ready to overreact, and then we said, and we always keep our hands behind us or keep our hands folded when we're speaking, simply because we don't want anyone to ever say that we are getting ready to do something aggressive, because we don't. We are never aggressive. We never bring up color. We never make it a hate speech. We teach only what the scriptures say. And right there, he got upset by that. You see? And then he said at one point that it doesn't matter what color. Yeah, it does matter what color. He said, does it matter? I said, yes, it does. Because if it didn't matter, why would the Most High put it in the scriptures? He puts it in the scriptures because he knew down the road that was going to be an issue of an argument. You see? So, but this is where we are with this particular devil. But we know that God has us covered. Khan? Is there anything else anyone would like to? Yes, sir. Go ahead.
And grace and peace, sir.
Grace and peace.
You know, people always say that, but so if it didn't matter, why did you change it?
Yeah. And remember, they're the ones who changed it. We have no printing press or publication houses. They're the ones who do it, and they have seen it. Khan? All right, any other points that anybody has? And any other points of interest before we get into the teaching? Yes, please. Very good. Did you say this past weekend? Good. I mean, she's been studying. Let's go there. The book of Micah 3.
Yes, sir, we're there. The book of Micah, chapter 1, it reads, the word of the Lord that came.
The book of Micah, chapter 3, beginning at verse 1.
Book of Micah, chapter 3, verse 1. And I said, hear, I pray you, O heads of Jacob, and ye princes of the house of Israel.
Read.
Is it not for you to know judgment? Who hate the good and love the evil? Who pluck off their skin from off them, and their flesh from off their bones? Who also eat the flesh of my people, and flay their skin from off them? And they break their bones and chop them in pieces, as for the pot and as flesh within the cauldron. Then shall they cry unto the Lord, but he will not hear them. He will even hide his face from them at that time, as they have behaved themselves ill in their doings. Thus said the Lord, concerning the prophets that make my people err, that bite with their teeth and cry, peace. And he that putteth not into their mouths, they even prepare war against him.
All right. Your question. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Indeed. Now, it's funny you should raise that. Now, last week, we made a statement. And I can almost guarantee certain questions or statements that is made that it's going to cause people to respond. And respond they did. Which was, how can you say that a white man eats black people? Right?
Come on.
The question is, how can you say that? Listen up. When they were coming across on the ships and they were bringing all those hundreds of black slaves, they had supplies to feed them. They had food for their sailors or their crew. No. There is no way that they could ever have sufficient. Some of the ships had over 100 slaves laying in a coffin-like position on the slave ships. They were not given the opportunity to stand up and stretch their legs. The journey, depending on which coast they left from, could take up to months. They fed them with slop. And the slop that they fed them with would also be contaminated with feces. The men would sometimes be laying next to females who are on cycles. There are some females who even gave birth whilst they were chained down. Now, they don't bring up these ugly truths in schools. And that's why they don't want their history shown or exposed, because it would show what an evil devil they are. Because even I have to choose my words carefully. They are devils to do that to another human being. If you think that's even an exaggerational point, that they didn't eat, and I see your hand, Rebecca. They have written books how they used to go to the hangings, not the hangings, the lynchings. And not all of it were lynchings. Some of it, they put the black man on a spit, tied his legs and his hand, and turned him. They would break up pieces of meat and send it all over the country. It's a fact. And you find that hard about the sailors cooking them on the ships? Well, here is the book. I produced it a few weeks ago, maybe even a few months ago. It's called The Delectable Negro. Now imagine a book exists that says that Negroes are delectable. Where is there a book that says the delectable white man? Because they said that we are the cannibals, therefore we're the ones that's out there eating them. Really? Well, when Stanley went into the deep parts of the Congo, this was garbage, absolute garbage. Because there's even writings where Stanley made statements that he exaggerated certain points. It's that Edomite devil who's now dead hundreds of years. He's the one that was sent into the Congo jungle by he was once the king of Belgium, Leopold. And he came back and wrote all that garbage out there. But back to this. This is called the Delectable Negro. And when you read this, you will be astonished how white people enjoyed the delicacy of a black man. And if you don't believe it, when you read it, it says the taste of Nat Turner. That's one of the stories in there. When Nat Turner, who was one of the revolutionaries who led a group of slaves into freedom, but sadly they were stopped because our own people went and told Massa, and Massa came back and had the power to shut us down. They speak about Nat Turner and how his black flesh and etc. etc. It's all in here. So I left it in front of the screen for a good while, so those of you can snapshot it or watch it, take a note of it. You get it, you read it, you will see that what you thought I was saying, especially because some of the other nations listen to us and watch us as well, and they like to complain. But the reason why they have a hard time is because everything that I say, I back it up with history or archaeology or with the fact that your people wrote this book. We didn't.
That's right.
So in pointing those facts out, you cannot blame us for anything, because we still to this day, this is 2022, and yet we still don't have giant house of publications and printing that. We still don't have it. So how were we able then to put our side up? We were never able to do that. Yes, ma'am, please. Just forgive me for that rant for a moment.
I saw an article yesterday that I guess they're trying to incorporate the topic of slavery into the school system, and you saw teachers now teaching the kids that only 4% of the nation was brought over here, that if you're teaching that the majority of slaves were born into slavery but not brought over.
Well, it was, again, that's a teacher speaking from the wrong orifice. And that's the nicest way that I can put it, more educationally. Here is the point. They don't know history.
Con,
Many of our people were already here
con,
in America. They have taught slavery in the reverse. Yes, many of our people were brought over to the Americas, but many of our people were born right here in America, and they are the natural so-called Indians of America.
con,
That's why even last night when we were speaking to that Caucasoid, and I said to him that we were the Indians. And I said, none of us are red. We are black men, so to speak.
he agreed.
And he agreed.
Yes, he did. He did. He knew.
This Caucasoid said, yes, I know.
That's true.
So don't get it in your mind that they don't know. They know.
Con.
But they're quite comfortable, if you don't say nothing and you don't know it, to leave you in your ignorance.
Right,
they don't
right.
want you to get the information.
Right. Mm.
Yes, please.
Back to the eating of Negro flesh. I also saw an article last week. It says the U.S. government sells cans of meat homogenated for $250 each can. So that caught my eye, and I was wondering, the government selling meat in a small can like catfish for $250 a can?
Mm-hmm.
And then I read on further,
Mm-hmm.
and it said it was a mixture of pork and chicken.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can't imagine a can of pork and chicken mixed together selling for $250.
Right.
So I wonder, could that be the delectable Negro?
More than likely, it could be.
That kind of way.
So I don't rule anything out because we're living in a very wicked age. And I just wish our people would wake up
Con,
and smell the coffee.
Yes.
This thing is real.
Real.
Now let's get into the teaching today. The teaching we're going to be dealing with today, we're beginning with the first group of people, which is going to be Dan. Dan. All right, so if we could make sure that the monitor is on, but we won't need to have anything up there just yet, but we'll go along, but we do need the monitor in full view of our audience here. To the Most High be the glory. We're able to give it directly to direct feed to our people who are watching. So let's go, if you please, to the book of Genesis chapter 49. And remember, Genesis chapter 49, please make a note of that. Genesis chapter 49 and Deuteronomy chapter 33, they're the two books you have to go to discover and understand who are the 12 tribes, how did they get here, and where does all this come from? That's where it comes from, Genesis chapter 49 and Deuteronomy chapter 33. Now, if you please, Genesis chapter 49, we're going to begin reading, if you please, at verse 17.
This is the book of Genesis, chapter 49 and verse 17. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path.
So we're going to stop, and we're going to break it down in bite-sized portions so that you understand the mystery of what is written here. Remember, the writer at the time did not write this, and we know it was Moses. He did not write it so it would be clear that everybody would understand this. Now, let me ask you a question. Do we understand everything in the scriptures when we sit? No, because many of us, I was raised in the church, and there's much that was there. I didn't understand it. Some of it was put in a form where it sounded very, very mystical, mystical-ish, and in fact at times would cause me to be a little bit kind of confused. But what I want you to do, I want you to understand this. Every portion that's been written has been written to help us break it down slowly and in piece form so that you can understand and find the precepts to go with it if you choose. I'm not going to go too heavy in it. I'm just going to give you enough for you to do your own research. Con?
Come.
So, Slucky, go back, read verse 16. It will give more clarity and then we just go for it.
This is Genesis 49:16. Dan shall judge his people
Go on.
as one of the tribes of Israel.
As one of the tribes of Israel. Now, one would say, well, how's this going to happen when you know we don't even see Dan around anymore? But when we read verse 17, it says,
Dan shall be a serpent by the way. And
so it's saying Dan shall be a serpent by the way. There's a comma there. Now, why does it say that? Because a serpent is usually something that is venomous and brings harm to someone or something. So it is saying that Dan will be venomous to our enemies. Are you with me so far? So as we read that, and by the way, when we say enemies of us, those who are the enemies of Israel, and we have many. I know you smile and talk with them every day and so on, and they act like they love you, and maybe they like you, but it doesn't mean they like everybody. Because that's why you hear them say, well, I have black friends, one. Because they like you, they don't like everybody. So here it tells us here, clearly, it says, read on, and
an adder in the path.
no, so it says an adder in the path. Now notice the comments that are there as we go along, showing you that it's trying to give you, there are breakdowns in this. No. So what is an adder? An adder is a poisonous snake, venomous, harmful to all those who go near it. So Dan is lethal to anyone who tries to attack the children of Israel. Read.
That biteth the horse heel.
So he biteth the horse heel. And why does he bite the horse heel? Because it causes the horse to go up on its hinds and to throw back the rider backwards. Con? So then when we read it, read, sir.
So that his rider shall fall backward.
So it said, so the rider will fall back. Now, why is that so important? Because falling back has a double entendre, double connotation, a double meaning. The first meaning is to throw back the enemy, that the enemy causes harm to himself. Because if you've never fallen from a horse and being thrown back on a horse, that can be quite devastating to your physicality. It can harm you. In fact, if anything, it can kill you. And that's how Christopher Reeves, who used to play Superman, lost his ability and his mobility. He was thrown back on his horse and he was unable to walk from that day on. So that's part one. Part two, in terms of the throwback, is because Dan now, due to his actions, caused Israel to be thrown back into idolatry. So then when we see that, it has a double connotation. Are you understanding me so far? So before we go any further, let me just let me see where I want to go. Okay, all right. So let's read verse 18, and then we're going to come back and read it in more depth. It says, read.
Genesis 49:18. I have waited for thy salvation.
I have waited for thy salvation. I have waited for you to be saved. Gone? All right. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 33. Deuteronomy chapter 33, and we're going to read Deuteronomy 33, and we're going to read verse 22.
It's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 33, and verse 22. And of Dan he said, Dan is a lion's whelp.
So it says Dan is a lion's whelp. So we heard this expression used before, and it was used towards Judah, because Judah is a courageous, strong lion. Many of you who sit in this room, you are Judah. But many of you also who say you are Judah, you may well be part of the northern kingdom in terms of the actual aborigines of America. Your ancestral line goes all the way back to those who were the aborigines of America. In fact, when it was called Turtle Island or even Astaroth, according to the scriptures. But we won't go there just yet. So there's a mixed multitude of you here. So, and you don't know who you are. But for the most part, many of you call yourselves Judah. No harm in that. Because that doesn't matter. Because ultimately, you're not going to do the sibling. The angel of the Lord is going to do the sibling. You're this, you're that, you're that. You go through that gate. Because we all have to go through a gate. Now, bear in mind, Christianity does not teach the 12 gates. Christianity teaches one gate, and it's the gate of St. Peter. And when you die and you go to heaven, and you go into that gate, Peter's at the gate saying, welcome, come on in. And Peter happens to be a bald-headed, bearded-faced Caucasian. Peter is no such thing. He's as black as the man you're looking at in the screen whilst you're watching this miniature broadcast. He's a black man. And here's the thing. The reason why they use one gate is to allow for everybody to get in there. There's one gate, everybody can go in there. Don't care who you are, you can go in there. Go ahead.
This is the book of Revelations, chapter 21 and verse 12. And had a wall great and high. It had 12 gates. And at the gates 12 angels, and names written thereon, which are the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel.
So, the 12 tribes of the children, we got you. You're good. So, when it comes down to Israel, there is no way that anyone can get into the kingdom unless they go through a gate, and your tribal name must be on it. Are you understanding this? You can't walk into a gate, freely, and you're not going to be picked out. You're going to be picked out. So, anyway, let me not get carried away. So, it says, Dan, he says, Dan is a lion's whelp. So, what does that mean? As we just read that he's like a poison adder, he is also like a lion's whelp, meaning he's strong. He's ready for war. He's not easily intimidated. That's what it's saying. Remember, what I'm reading here is about your ancestry, my ancestry, who are the 12 tribes of Israel. You've got to get it into your head and don't see this as some folktale. This is real. So when we see this now, it says he's like a lion's whelp. And what does it say next?
He shall leap from Bashan.
He shall leap from Bashan. Now, Bashan is northern section of Judea, what they call Palestine now. And what it's saying, he shall leap, meaning he's going to leap into the nation of Israel. Now, what does that mean? Because Dan, like Levi, lost his allotment to the promise. He lost it. And so when it says he's going to leap here, he's going to be scattered into all of the 12 tribes. There's a bit of Dan in that tribe, bit of Dan in that tribe, bit of Dan in that tribe. There's a bit of Dan over in the Africas, in the continents of Africa, well, in the continent of Africa, where all the different nations of our people are scattered still. And you won't know him. Now, there are some tribes over in Africa right now that call themselves Danite. And they can trace themselves going all the way back for hundreds of years. Some say even thousands of years. They can go back and they classify themselves as Danites, keeping all the traditions. Come on? So it says that he has the strength and he will leap. Is that right?
That's right.
That's what it tells us. Quickly now, go with me. Let me see. Stay where you are. Let me see. So let's go to Revelations chapter 7 and 1.
This is the book of Revelations, chapter 7.
And those who are watching, you could see I'm doing double duty. I'm reading, teaching, directing, all the rest of it. Heaven help me. All right, so come back a higher. All right, so here we are. Revelations chapter 7.
In verse 1, it reads, "And after these things, I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth."
Read it again.
"And after these things, I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth."
The 4 corners of the earth. All right, we're good. We're good. Too much distraction. So it says, and after these things, read it again.
"And after these things, I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners of the earth,
Go on.
holding the 4 winds."
Holding what?
The 4 winds.
The 4 winds. Go on.
Of the earth.
Of the earth. Now, what that means, no more distraction for me, please. It means, what does the 4 winds mean? Can someone please tell me? What does the, yes, please, at the back. Say it again. Destruction. So the destruction that it says that 4 winds are holding back, go on.
"And the wind should not blow on the earth."
Oh, blow where?
On the earth.
On the earth, go on.
"Nor on the sea.
Go on.
Nor on any tree."
Nor on any trees. The trees are always significant of people. The focus of the trees is primarily about, when we use the term trees, it's always speaking about people. Trees are always synonymous of people. Are you with me? So from here, let's go to 2nd Ezra, just for a quick moment. 2nd Ezra, let's deal with the wind. 2nd Ezra, chapter 13. And I want us to read verse 5.
This is the book of 2nd Esdras 13 and 5 on page 30. It reads, "And after this I beheld, and lo, there was gathered together
Read.
a multitude of men
Multitude of men. Listen carefully now. Read.
out of number,
Out of number. Go on.
from the 4 winds,
From what?
from the 4 winds
From the 4 winds. Go on.
of the heaven,
Of the heavens. Go on. Or heaven. Go on.
to subdue the man that came out of the sea."
Out of the sea. See that? So, here we are seeing that the 4 winds are destructions getting ready to happen. Now, there's more to it than what is there, but that's not the focus of the teaching today. We'll cover that maybe at a later point. But I want you to see that their destruction is waiting to come. The 4 corners of the earth, destruction is looming. It wants to come. It can't come because the angels are holding it back. Now, what is the destruction? It's a number of things. Not only is it the elements, because the elements will play a part of the destruction of the earth, but also it is man, it is people, all doing certain types of things. Con? So when we look at it now, we're going to get better understand. Go to Isaiah 11:11. Isaiah 11 and 11. Isaiah 11 and 11.
This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 11 and verse 11.
Now, these are scriptures that truthfully your pastors in your local go to worship, Sunday worship church should teach. But how can they teach truth on a lying day called Sunday? Doesn't make any sense. How can truth come out of that? You can get motivated, you get happy, but truth, Let's read.
Verse 11, it reads, "And it shall come to pass in that day,
Read,
that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time."
See, again the second time. The first time was when we were in Egypt, right? Now we are in spiritual Egypt, spiritual Babylon, and it says, go on.
To recover.
To do what?
To recover.
To recover, go on.
The remnant.
The remnant, meaning it is not all of Israel. So don't get it twisted. I'm an Israelite. Because some people think because they're an Israelite, they're taking it happy-go-lucky. Well, I'm going to go to the kingdom and God loves me, doesn't love you. But if you're still twerking, if you're still whoremongering, men, if you are still selling your soul to the devil, then you're going to be destroyed. So he says clearly here, to recover the remnant. That means it's only after 1/3 of Israel. Because 2/3 of Israel, especially right here in the Americas and the Caribbean, they're going to be destroyed. 2/3 of all that are in South America, Central America, North America, the Caribbean, Canada, they're going to be destroyed. 2/3 of us. Because there are many Caribbeans who live in Canada. See? Then it says, of
his people.
Read.
Which shall be left from Assyria.
From Assyria.
And from Egypt.
Now, some of you may not understand that part. It means our people are still in Assyria. Our people are still in Egypt. But he says, I'm going to pull you out. That remnant. And then he says, right, go on.
And from Pathros.
Go on.
And from Cush.
Cush, that means that some of our people are even living in the land of the Hamites. So when we're reading this, you have to understand, our people, the Bible says, we are like the sand of the sea. We're everywhere. There is no nation that covers the face of the earth like we.
No.
We are the children of the living God. Yahweh. But watch what it goes on to say. Go on.
And from Elam.
Elam is India. We have people in India right now. They look like you. You see them, you see yourself in them because the phenotype is just like you. I've seen them with my own eyes.
Yeah.
Read.
And from Shinar.
Shinar, go on. That's Babylon, go on.
And from Hamath.
Go on.
And from the islands of the sea.
And from the islands of the sea, because there are many islands around what's called Africa, the continent. Lots of islands. There were islands there that one of the popes had all of the Jews brought there and dumped them there. Said they could not leave the island to go to any parts in Europe and not even to go into Africa. Oh yes, there are witnesses, there are books that have been scribed stating these things. So this is no surprise, brothers and sisters. None whatsoever. All right, quickly, let's go back, if you please. Let's go back to Genesis go back to Deuteronomy. Go back to Deuteronomy 33. Right, so get ready because we're going to pull out some slides in a moment.
Yes, sir.
So Deuteronomy chapter 33. And we're going to read verse 20.
This is the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 33 and 20. It reads, "And of Gad he said, Blessed be he that enlargeth Gad."
That enlarges Gad. Now, notice, there is a colon there. This is not supposition. This is clearly a statement of fact. Gad is enlarged. Now, if we can pull up some slides, if you please, of the Gadites. They are the ones that, I want the ones with Gad that shows him with his crown of feathers. His crown of feathers. Now, just to give you some understanding, and you might want to make a note of this, I'm going to slow down my speech for a moment so you can write this down. Gad is also known as the Sioux. Gad is also known as Cheyenne. Gad is known as Apache. Now, many people like to make the statement and say that these people came through, that these people who are Gad are indeed Chinese, who came down back in the ancient days and they became the Indians of the north and blah, blah, blah. And they came through the barren straits. Hogwash. Garbage. There is no entrance from that point or side of the world to get to where we are in this side of the world. Those who are in China, and even if you want to use Japan if you wish, but primarily China since it's the biggest, there is none that can get through there. This is what they say. They came through the barren straits. That's what they teach you at school. That's a lie. It's a lie, it's a lie, and it's more of a lie. Now, since we're taking a little bit of time with that, all right, I'm going to pull up a book for evidential purposes. This book that I'm going to bring up, it's called The History of the American Indians by James Adir. This is what the book actually looks like. All right? It is an excellent book. It really is. It is a book that proves certain points. If you could give that to our brother there, thank you. The page is already marked. This particular book, brothers and sisters, it proves certain things that they have been saying and been teaching you, and you and many of us who go through the school system have taken it to be truth. Please remember, the school system was never created to make you the brain of America or the brain of England or the brain of the world. It was created to control and to program you into a certain way of thinking. That's what it was made for. The man who started this, going back to the Rockefellers, he said he did not want a nation of elitists. He wanted a nation of workers. He said, I'm the elite, and those who are like me, we want to remain there. We don't want no one up here joining us. This is Rockefeller now. You see? So, when we see this information, I'll go to the designated page.
Yes, I'm there, sir.
Right. Now, before we read that, I want to give our sister a little bit more time here.
Yes,
Run with me back to Genesis chapter 49. Remember what I said, Genesis 49 and Deuteronomy 33. They're the two go-to scriptures to understand who we are according to the scriptures.
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Right, so when we read that now, I want to read verse 19 so we understand Gad. Let's read.
This is the book of Genesis 49 and 19. It reads, Gad, a troop shall overcome him.
So what?
Overcome him.
So notice, he's called a troop. And why is he called a troop? Because a troop is someone who is ready for war, conditioned for war. A troop is someone that's good at scouting. That's why I remember in all the movies we watched when we were children, they would have an Apache or someone who was of maybe Sioux or Cheyenne Nation, because they could read the hoofs of horses. They could read smoke in terms of the signal or the words that it was given. They had those skills. They could even go to an area where people were, and by the smell, inhaling, they could inhale how many horses. There were many horses, over 60 horses that were here. And you see, those are skills that our people have. No wonder they didn't want you to know that you were the Indian. It would make you too lethal. So when we read that now, it says, Gad, a troop shall overcome him. Read on.
But he shall overcome at the last.
At the last. We'll get to that in a moment. So he goes back to the times of the U.S. cavalry. And as a U.S. cavalry, he was in a position to take control of guiding the so-called soldiers to go and discover other Indians to kill them, our own people. Let's read that. Let's read what's about.
This is from the book called The History of the American Indians by James Adair. It reads, some have supposed the Americans to be descended from the Chinese, but neither their religion, laws, customs, and etc. agree.
All right, hold it there for a moment. Now, to prove that point, there's another book I want to recommend. This book is called Asian Slaves in Colonial Mexico, From Chinos to Indians. This is by Tatiana. Now, this particular book here, it proves the point that why you see certain Indians that have slant eyes, or certain Mexicans that have slant eyes, is because they're mixed with Filipino. They brought the Philippines in. In fact, what they did, they took some Mexicans and brought them over to the Philippines, and then they took some of the Philippines and brought them over and put them into Mexico. You see how dastardly devilish this so-called Caucasian is? That's what he did. Read on.
Agree in the least with those of the Chinese, which sufficiently proves they are not of that line.
See that? Now remember, we didn't write this, right? We didn't publish it, right? They're the ones who wrote it. They're the ones who published it. And it says clearly there that they are not Chinese. So when you have seen some of the imageries and it shows them, they are mixed. Those are mixed, but they are not true Indians. Read on.
Neither could persons fail to America from the north by the way of Tartary.
By the way of what?
Tartary,
Go on.
or ancient Scythia, that from its...
Now, when it uses the word Scythians, I put the meaning of the word next to it. I wrote it down. You got it there?
Yes, sir, Chinese.
Chinese. That's what they called the Scythians. Okay? Go on.
that from its situation never was or can be a maritime power.
See that? Read.
And it is utterly impracticable for any to come to America by sea from that quarter. Besides, the remaining traces of their religious ceremonies and civil and marital customs are quite opposite to the like vestiges of the old Scythians, which is Chinese. Nor even in the moderate northern climates is to be seen the least vestige of any ancient stately buildings or of any thick settlements, as are said to remain in the less healthy regions of Peru and Mexico.
Go on.
Several of the Indian nations assure us they crossed the Mississippi before they made their present northern settlements, which connected with the former arguments will sufficiently explode that weak opinion.
Read.
Of the American Aborigines being linear as descended from the Tartars, or ancient Scythians, Chinese. It is very difficult thing to divest ourselves, not to say other persons, of prejudice and favorite opinions, and I expect to be censured by some for opposing commonly received sentiments, or for meddling with a dispute agitated among the learned ever since the first discovery of America.
Read.
But truth is my object, and I hope to offer some things which, if they do not fully solve the problem, may lead the way and enable others possessing stronger judgment, more learning, and more leisure to accomplish it. As I before suggested, where we have not the light of history or records to guide us through the dark maze of antiquity, we must endeavor to find it out by probable arguments, and in such subjects of inquiry, where no material objections can be raised against probability, it is strongly conclusive of the truth, and nearly gives the thing sought for from the most exact observation I can make in during the long time I traded among the Indians Americans. I was forced to believe them lineally as descended from the Israelites, either while they were a maritime power or soon after the general captivity. The latter, however, is the most probable.
Read.
This descent I shall endeavor to prove from their religious rites, civil and marital customs, their marriages, funeral ceremonies, manners, language, traditions, and a variety of particulars, which will at the same time make the reader thoroughly acquainted with nations, of which it may be said to this day, very little have been known.
Come on. All right. Now, does that make sense to you so far?
Come.
All right. Now, before I go forward, Rebecca, you had your hand up. I'm sorry. Did you? All right. Very good. All right. So here we are. Let's go back to Deuteronomy chapter 33 and verse 20. If we could find the slide with the information that shows the Indians with their crown of feathers, their crown of feathers. All right. Oh, good. All right. Let's get that up there. Now, what I want you to see, brothers and sisters, is that when we read Deuteronomy 33, and we're going to read verse 20 again, read it if you please.
This is the book of Deuteronomy 33 and 20. And of Gad he said, blessed be he that enlargeth
That
Gad.
one, enlarges Gad. Now, so Gad has large lands. That group of Indians, they have the biggest portion of all of the 10 tribes. They have the biggest portion. Their portion goes even into the whole of Canada and the whole of the northern sections, northwest sections of the Americas. They have the biggest. That's why it says, read,
He dwelleth as a lion.
as a lion. Now remember, we read earlier back in Genesis, it's like a lion's whelp, meaning he's not afraid of anyone now. And if any of you understand the psychology of a lion, when you watch a lion, you'll always usually see him walking. Why does he continue to walk? Because the whole purpose of him walking is that he's walking through his land and his pride. That's why it's called a lion's pride. Because he has great area. If he doesn't walk through it, because he has a number of lionesses in different parts, and he walks through those sections, and he makes sure that his lionesses are not molested, that his cubs are being raised properly. That's the type of spirit that is in a lion, the psychology. And he continues to walk through his land. That's why when you see a lion, he's usually walking. He's not walking aimlessly. He has a pride, and he's covering all of his land. Here is what the scriptures now is teaching us, that he dwelleth as a lion, and as dwelling as a lion, he does the things that lions do. That's Gad. But then when we read further, it says,
And teareth the arm.
He does what?
Teareth the arm.
That's where we get the, if we just put it straight up for me, please. That's where we get the blood brother covenant from. They cut their arm and they rub their blood together and they bind it and say, we now are blood brothers. Now, it's something obviously we don't do today because people's blood now are poison. Because you don't know who has had certain types of infections, and you just can't do it anymore. But back then, remember, they were untouched by any of the nations. Hold that one for a moment. They were untouched by any of the outside nations. In other words, the Europeans had not come at this point. And remember, when the Europeans came, who were primarily the Spaniards, which were the conquistadors, when they came, they brought venereal diseases with them. None of our people had venereal diseases. We didn't know what that was. None of our people had the flu. They didn't know what that was. It didn't mean that they didn't have basic illnesses, such as fevers, because usually, depending on what you eat or if you were stung by a creature, that causes those ailments to come on you. But all of the other ailments that just come into your body without you wanting it to, those came from the Europeans. Then it says at the latter clause of verse 20, what does it say?
With the crown of the head.
With the crown of the head. What you're looking at there are pictures. This is a colorized version. But you'll notice how the devil decided to lighten the faces of the Indians. They lightened their faces. In the original, and I've seen the original of this, their faces are darker. And the original is a black and white. But they colorize this, and you see them all with their crowns of feathers. That's what it's basically called. These are kings. Now, they're called chiefs, according to the white man, but they are kings. They're kings over different regions of the Americas and the Canadas, so that they would come together at a council. The white man first came and saw when all the Sioux Nation and the Cheyenne Nation, the Apache, and they all came together. When the white man saw this, it is written, by the way, I'm not making it. He said, when he saw the number of Indians come together for an Indian council, it said that his heart melted. Because there is no way that they could overcome such a great unified nation of people. You've been taught that they are savages. They had buildings. They had senates that they call today. They had government organizations in their time. And people are making you know that they were basically savages. They were not savages. They took with them from the land of where they were in Israel and what they had obviously learned and through all of their captivities and brought them over here and set it up. They didn't have relationships where one of the men was having sex with another man's wife. They would be killed because they still followed the law. Damien, I see your hand, so hold your question for a moment. They were in those positions where they observed the law and they maintained it. All of what they had was lost because the white man came and brought corruption. Now some of you think, well, you just get all passionate about it. No. I'm telling you what is historically written by the Caucasoid people. They wrote that. Your question, sir.
Actually, there's two comments. I have
Go ahead.
a black and white of the kings. I have a black and white of the kings with the full head.
Yes, we have that.
In black.
Come on.
They are, you can clearly see.
Yes.
And then,
Go to the next one.
Custard and Little Bighorn.
Yes, sir.
He ran into the middle when he tried to fight. He thought that was all. But, and they did not say the correct number, but there were actually millions in that.
Absolutely.
And there were different groups of
Indeed.
Native Americans. It just wasn't one Sioux or Apache.
Absolutely. Because remember, they had an Indian council and part of the reason why the Indian council became more sophisticated is because they realized that there were invaders coming into the country. And they saw them and they knew they couldn't fight them alone. So they had to have all of the other nations come together. That's why when General Armstrong Custer came at Little Bighorn to take and defeat the Indians, he was stepping into a nest where there were hundreds, if not millions, of Indians, and they consumed him. They didn't want to take the pride of the white man away. They made it that he fought to the death. He fought to the nothing, because how can you go into another man's backyard and think you can overcome him? Where he has his neighbors.